He says, I've seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Vanity, of course, is a passive thing, a useless thing, and vexation of spirit would be a draining of one's spirit, or something that just consumes. Doesn't really grant anything as spirit. The works in the earth, all of what you do in the earth, does not grant anything as spirit. Now, before you challenge that, you have to hear the rest in context. But that is very true. The works of the earth do nothing for your spirit, right? Let's continue to read so you find out why. He says, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. That which is empty, wanting, needs more. It cannot be numbered. They're countless. I commune with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have got more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart hath great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is a vexation of spirit. See, so he was a smart guy, the wisest that ever was. He says, and I give my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. Oh, he's going out on the deep end. To know wisdom is one thing, but he didn't stop there. He said he gave his heart to know wisdom, and what else? Madness and folly. Well, how do you do that? He's a wise person. He's going to tell you how he did it. I wouldn't do it. I can tell you that right now because it already happened to me. It happened to some of you too. But I wouldn't just voluntarily do it. No way. He says, for in much wisdom is grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Now, before you run away with that, all these things have to be placed in context. So that means, please don't ever say, well, Mike is wise, and so that's why he's sad. Don't attribute that to me, nor will I use that as an excuse. I won't do that, because in the context of what he's talking about, all these things put in context are giving you almost like the beginning of a blueprint to your own life. Answers that you can almost not find anywhere else. It is an extraordinary book. Let me go to chapter 2. I said, my heart, go to now, and I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. So he's taking a step here. He said in his heart, go now. I will prove thee with mirth. You guys know what mirth is? Mirth is happiness, kind of like an excitement. It's like an excitement. I know you guys think it's an item, but it's like excitement. He said, therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. Now, how is that useless? He said he set in his heart to go now with joy, with excitement. He's going forth with excitement and joy. Why is he calling that vanity? We'll see some truth is going to come out here. He said, behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and mirth, what doeth it? This happiness and energetic going forth, what is it doing? Nothing. He said, I sought mine heart to give myself unto wine. So not only did he go out into the world in his wisdom and live these different lifestyles, now he's become a drunkard. He said, I sought mine heart to give myself unto wine, not to the wise, but to wine, yet acquainting my heart with wisdom. So he's becoming a wino to understand it, to see it, to live it, to know it. Giving his heart to wisdom means it's almost like an experiment. He said to lay hold on folly. That means to touch it, to be the fool, to see what's the big deal. I'm telling you, I wouldn't do this. He said, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works, and I builded me houses and planted me vineyards. So now he just took a path of another lifestyle. Now this guy is living out all these lifestyles. To what? To gain wisdom. We don't have to do that because he already wrote about it. We don't have to go out there and become a drunk to see what's the big deal. To learn the intimacies of a drunk, he wrote about it. We don't have to do most things because he wrote about it. That's what makes this book so extraordinary. When you start to see this, it's going to blow you away. He said, I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them, all kinds of fruits. I made me pools of water, and water wherewith that wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, the peculiar treasures of the kings and of provinces. I got me singers and women singers, and the delights of sons, men's, and musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So now he's the party guy, right? The rich party guy who sits up there and has everybody entertain him. He said, so I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. All my wisdom remained with me. So he never lost his purpose in what he was doing. He never did that. Never lost his purpose. And he said, and whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And this was my portion of all my labor. He's about to name it. Listen. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and all the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit. And there was no profit under the sun. So if those things he did, of being the rich guy, of being the wino, of being the person with joy who goes out just to enjoy life, of being a wise person who has all these subjects and servants, all of it was vanity and vexation of spirit. That just ruins everything, right? No, it doesn't. It gives you understanding. If you take it to heart, it gives you understanding. Look at the world through all the years you can research history. Man has been doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's kind of like the elections. Every single time somebody gets elected, they give the same promises. People get built up. They elect a guy they want. The same thing happens. You know what happens? Somebody else gets elected. It's the same thing over and over again. And each time people get excited, they vote, they end up not happy at the end, and somebody else gets elected. They do the same thing, and it's this never-ending cycle that we keep falling for. It's almost like we can't see it, like we give ourselves over to it, and we can't recognize it. Didn't you know that life is the same way? And people go in circles, staying stuck in a lot of cases. And he's telling us that all these things in the world do not profit the spirit anything. I have to remind you, he said he went forward with joy. In this one walk he went forward with joy. And it too was vanity. So that walk, he's giving us all types of walks that we could imagine to take in all of its vanity and vexation of spirit. All of us are a testament to that too. If we were not a testament to that, we would never have frowned nor cried in sorrow, nor would we have said, Lord, why am I here? But all of us have said that or thought that in our hearts. So we know that we took one of these paths and we found too that it was vanity and vexation of spirit. We just hold it up by reason of a type pride and something that's about to be named here soon. Oh, this book is packed full of wisdom. Stay with me. This is almost like a foundation before the foundation. So he looks at the works of what he did, all these different paths he took, and he's looking at it. And he says, now I turn myself to behold wisdom and the madness and folly. For what can a man do that cometh after a king? Even that which hath been done already, or already done. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly. Wisdom excels or increases folly. And as far as light excelleth darkness. It does. Light increases darkness. The wise man's eye are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. I myself perceived also that one event happeneth them all. Hear what he just said? The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Then said I in my heart, as it happened to the fool, so it happened even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that this also is vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever. Seeing that which now in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man as the fool? Therefore I hated life, because the work that was wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. For all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. He says, and who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor wherewith I have labored, and wherein I have showed myself wise under the sun. This is also vanity. What is he saying? Do you guys catch what he's saying? Let me give you a hint of what he's saying. With all these different lifestyles, he took this venture under to live, and he found that all was vanity and vexation of spirit. He found that the wise and the fool both depart the earth, that all these strivings that men have unto themselves is all going up in smoke. All the labors one could ever commit and really put their hearts to, they don't know who's going to be left to. History does repeat itself, because we have no record of kingdoms past a certain point, and neither did they. He said that in the first chapter. There are things they didn't know of, even in his time, but those same things he didn't know of would be in the future. All of it's vanity. Why is he saying it's vanity and vexation of spirit? Because people pursue them. as though somehow it's going to yield some supernatural thing as a fix to their lives, and it never does. You're starting to see that. When you pursue a lifestyle, when you pursue things, it's not a fix to your life. It's not going to fix your spirit. That's not what it's going to do. Can it be a blessing? You bet. But it's not going to fix your spirit. It's not going to give you the answers you want. For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. That also is vanity and vexation of spirit. And of course, he's pointing out the latter half of that. So what do we have here? We have something Jesus continually talked about, the prophets talked about, but hardly nobody listened. Let me give an example before I take a break. There are a lot of people who believe in the Father, but they look at television, and those people on television, people who seemingly have influence, it causes them to attempt or to want to pursue exactly what they're pursuing. It causes another person to want to be in their shoes. And what that person does not know is that path set by the world is vain, and it's also vexation of spirit. So what is a clause here? That God appoints you things in the earth that you would never choose yourself. You somewhat find yourself doing them. Many people have found joy in types of employment or lifestyle they never chose. They have found it a joy to be given gifts and talents and employment and things to do, but they never picked it. And God has made their heart content in what He gave them. Are you starting to see this? Anybody seeing this? Because most people who end up quite joyful in life, they did not pick their profession. Do you know that? And most people who are full of sorrows, drink too much, and all these other things in life, they picked their profession. Isn't that a simple truth that somehow we miss it so many times? But why? Because the principles of the living God are real. And what He's doing in this world is real. And sometimes we act like He's not real, like He's not there. Like we have to pursue something in the world, do it in a specific way to find joy. Our life is proof that we cannot do it that way. It's not going to work, and it never has worked for anybody else. It's a facade. These folks that you see on television, these folks that you hear, all these influencers and everybody else, they have vexation of spirit, and all of what they're doing is vain. It will go into nothingness. What remains then? You do. When God plants you in a specific place, God is the one that's investing in you. God is the one that has planted things in you, and that won't return void, nor will it be vanity or vexation of spirit to Him, but it's His everlasting joy. But if we do it, what can we do it to? We're just human beings right now. We have a spirit, yes, but our spirits are often vexed because we cannot reach this mythical destination the world said we could. So riches will not do it. You know that most people who win the lottery, they are in more financial trouble about 5 years down the road than they ever were before they won the lottery. Many of them wish they had never won the lottery because their lives are turned upside down. You don't hear about them anymore. You just don't. Horrible things happen to them too. Why? He told us here, because with gains in this world comes a vexation. How's that so? Because if you start gaining things, what was one thing we learned in these first 2 chapters? Wisdom excels or increases what? Folly. So what does light increase? Evil. The more light you have in you, the more evil is coming in your direction. The more wisdom you have within yourself, the more folly that's going to be around you. And it hunts for you. See, He's giving you caution because He knows all these paths. A lot of people, they want to be perfect. But Jesus already told them, no, you're not perfect. All the whole heavens know you're not perfect. Because if you were perfect, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here because your flesh would be overwhelmed. You'd have to be in supernatural form to continue that way. You can't be perfect and be here in the flesh. You would have to be the strongest individual on earth to be perfect and be here. Because there are laws in place, just like gravity. I give an example about folly and evil following light and wisdom. The Lord said He would abase. He's going to abase anybody. Paul said the same thing when Paul was talking about that thorn in his side. He said that thorn was a messenger of Satan to buffet him, which was the resistance he faced. He went from place to place. Listen, and he said Christ would not remove it for a specific reason. Does anybody know what that reason is? He gave Paul the reason, but did anybody ever investigate the reason? Why He wouldn't remove it? It was so that Paul would not be elevated above the word he was speaking. See, if Paul went around and doing all these miracles, speaking perfect and doing this and doing that, people would surely worship him him more than they would Jesus Christ, because he would be the evidence of the power of Christ working in the earth. And if he had no flaws, people wouldn't be able to help themselves but to follow him just like Christ. And he said, I'm thankful to God he did this, because he didn't want to disrespect Christ by that happening. See, he asked 3 times to have it removed, and he said 3 times. The Lord said, his grace was sufficient for him. That was the end of that. Once you get into that thing, you'll find out that Paul did not want to be edified higher than Christ. He said, surely they would worship him if he didn't have people that would tear down his message. Note that Paul can go in certain cities. He can go into certain places. He couldn't keep certain promises. Why? There were times when Paul was supposed to go somewhere, and then Satan would come against him, wreck the whole thing, and they were losing their confidence in Paul in certain areas. But that's the way the Lord works. The Lord does that because he knows exactly what we'll do. If we see a perfect example in the earth, we'll begin to worship it. People do it all the time. If a stuttering person like Moses was to come on air, you guys wouldn't want to listen to somebody like that. I probably would, but you guys wouldn't. Most people they try to hear perfection. And when they hear that perfection, they go for it initially. Only once you get to know someone can you look beyond the flaws and all these other things and hear what's coming out of the mouth of that individual. But initially, you don't hear the person. You hear the presentation. That's what draws people. That's why people look the way they do. That's why they sound the way they do. Initially, they draw other people. Then when they get to know them, the Lord does something else. Because humility is necessary. Does a man want to take the credit of Christ upon himself? You know, when people get attitudes because they're, no, the Bible works this way and I'm not going to accept it any other way. That's evil. God doesn't need us to defend his word. He doesn't need us to define it. He can give the entirety of the Bible to a mule, if we saw examples of that, and speak through that same mule. Reading through Ecclesiastes is a very sobering message, but it's full of laws and wisdom of things that are so real that if one could capture it, they would not live in this fantasy life that's always going upside down. Do you not know that your life can stop going upside down? The storm can be over right now. But see, if the storm was over, could you have spiritually benefited from the storm itself? If the storm were to end right now, would you perpetuate something that God is wiping away from you? See, the storm came to clean you, to make you white, to wash you. That's why the storm came. But if the storm was taken away, would you be washed? Would you be corrected? Would you stand taller? Or would you go back to being the same individual that you were with the same flaws and mistakes you know nothing about? Every storm exposes weaknesses within you and within me. Every storm. They are critical and important. The question is, who would you be without the storms? Because if you look over your life at what your problems have exposed, would you have gotten rid of them yourself? The truth is, we had no willpower to get rid of our own problems. See, we always think we have the solution. We always think we know what's wrong with us. I was talking to somebody one time. They said, well, I already know what's wrong with me. I just need, I said, wait a minute. So you know what's wrong with you. Why are you still broken if you know what's wrong with you? Well, I just need someone to, wait a minute. But you know what's wrong with you. Once you know what's wrong with you, once you can truly identify what's wrong with you, you can purge it yourself. There are people out there that will tell you in a heartbeat. They know what's wrong with them. They'll say, well, no, I don't need anybody to tell me. I know what's wrong. I just need, this to fix it with. That's all. It's kind of sad, really, because these same people say this 30, 40, 50 years. They stay in the same rut for all those years. Why? Because they're the expert. They have become their own physician, and they're not. That's what we're talking about here. All these different lifestyles and pursuits, people always say to themselves, well, if I just had this job, then I could. Well, if I could just do this, then I could. Well, if I could take this brick, then I could. That's taking a path in life that somebody else took that will yield nothing spiritually. And men do this generation after generation after generation after. I'll tell you, if somebody would listen to this Ecclesiastes, give it their real attention and cut the pattern that so many men take, they will be added to the free list, free of the idioms we go through all the time. And if we know what's wrong with us, I would advise no one to ever say that. Well, I know what's wrong. I just need this tool to fix it. Hopefully you'll say, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. Because the truth is, if we knew what was wrong in truth, we would have prayed the right prayer. God would not hesitate to answer the prayer. But I'll submit to you right now, we can't even identify the problem. All throughout our lives, God gently, He discloses what we're truly facing, what's truly in us, what we truly have to overcome. He never does it all at one time. He gently exposes this as we're growing. But if you get to know this for yourselves, you're going to see how He went out to these different lifestyles and why. You're going to have more reasons as to why He called them vanities and vexation of spirit. The vexation of spirit part is awful. And indeed, it is how this earth continues to go through circles and cycles, never-ending cycles that man cannot free himself from. And it's time for you to identify it so that you cannot follow the trail of the world in these worldly things. I'm talking about everything too. He just said he was a preacher. He said even the preaching, guys, you just got to read it yourself, because I'm telling you, things are going in a circle revolving, and people are going to have the same fate as those that came before them. Why? Because they choose to follow the same dream. And if you haven't noticed, the world is pretty good at selling things. They taught you how to live your lives. They taught you that you ought to have a couch and a coffee table and curtains with blinds and all this other stuff. And you know what He's saying initially? All of it's vanity. God will give you a higher standard. Why would He give you a higher standard if you're going to continue to reject it, thinking that the world's standard is the highest standard? Because your eye is fixated on the world, trusting in the world. We claim Christ, we do, but the truth, let's let the truth be told. If I go into anybody's house, it's modeled after the world. It is not modeled after Christ. We do exactly what the world has always done. And that is vanity and vexation of spirit. Just because we label it holy, label it Christianity, or label it Christ, that doesn't mean that's what it is. Our standards are coming from the world. Isn't that something? From your hairstyles, to your clothing, to the way you arrange your house, to the habits you have in your house. All of it has been taught by who? Mankind. Just think of that. We are parakeets and copycats. We would like to say we're original, but we're not. We wear clothes after the fashion of people. And I'll tell you something else. The Lord has put things in us. But because the rest of the world was not doing it, we didn't do it either. Period. And because the rest of the world was not saying it, we didn't say it either. Now, I'm a bit off in that area, because I'll be the cuckoo wad of the bunch quickly. I don't normally go along with the crowd. In fact, if the crowd is doing something, I'm just immediately walking the other direction. Is that smart? Not always. And this is not about going and hiding under a rock. No, because you still, listen, one of the points you're going to learn here is if you're not able to step into the world, you've messed up somewhere. You should be immune enough to step anywhere on the face of this earth and to get things done. But see, nobody tells us that. One of the first things they tell you is, well, what you got to do is you got to get away from all evil. You cannot do that because you're on the earth and you're in the flesh. So you have to pierce evil, overcome darkness. You have to deal with it always. That's why Jesus is the light within us, because He placed us in the darkness. We're lamps, and a lamp is not meant to be set under anything. We are that spectacle. Let me continue chapter 3. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. Now listen, every purpose under heaven. He didn't say every purpose in the heavens. I have to really emphasize this. He said to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. He did not say in the heavens. He didn't say by the heavens in this case. He said under the heavens. Let me give you a case in point, because a lot of people use this to exercise anger and to exercise other things. No, they use it like an excuse. He said it's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill. None of us is going to go out there and kill. We're not. None of us will. We're not going to kill anything. A time to heal, that we might do. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones. A time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. There it is. I've heard people say, oh, there's a time for hatred. Okay, so that means you're going to go out there and kill also. No. He said there's a time to kill. Are you going to go out and kill something? You're going to go out and cast stones at something, because that's in there too. No, we're not. That's why he said, under the heavens, there is a season for these things. When he says there's a season to every purpose under heaven, men go through stages. Within life, there are stages. That's what he's talking about. Not a license to go and do this stuff, but that in the world, there are going to be seasons where these things are exercised, just like your children go through seasons. A child's heart is full of folly, but they don't remain a child, nor do we. Do you see? A time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. He said, what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. Second time he says this, that he saw the travail which God hath given the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set the world in their heart. Did you see this? He has set the world in their hearts. Now see, this is why accusation is no good. If God set the world in a person's heart, then they're full of the world because God put it there. Why? Because of his seasons and his purposes. And what we have to overcome to actually choose him, and that choice to be of truth. The choice we make for Christ is going to be of truth, not of a lie. It's going to be of truth. And so we have things set in us to overcome. As we overcome, it takes the power of choosing the Lord to do so, or else we digress back into the world so easily. Many of us know that. He says, he hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set the world in their hearts so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Yet you have people searching for all the deepest secrets of the living God, when in truth, they should have worked on their relationship with Christ, accepted his gift, been content with what the Lord had them placed in, and maximized the holiness in their lives. I had to give you this reminder. He's given us just enough time to truly make a choice in all things, to truly choose him in those choices. He's given us just enough time. We have a lifetime, but that lifetime has an expiration date. And within that lifetime, you will have chosen by way of truth, period. I'm telling you, I've been there at the top, and it's not fulfilling. It just wasn't fulfilling. I know people right now at the top. They're not fulfilled either. They haven't found what I've found. Or let's say they haven't been given what I've been given. They have an opportunity, but that's up to us to accept it. And most often, we accept things based on advantage. I didn't accept this based on advantage. It was at a disadvantage. I don't expect that to change. I expect it to continue because it is a what? Labor. A labor is not a handout. A labor is something you're going to do something for. A labor is something that never stops. It continues. And when you do things and you labor to do it, the Lord is faithful. Listen, the key is this. You ready for the key? It must be a labor. It must be something of yourself poured into something else. Never, never, never getting used to anything and to sit back and wait till it comes. None of that but a labor. If it's not a labor, you've turned it into something else. And Satan's going to be after you to pervert everything God does for you. Don't let him pervert that. It's a labor, but it's a joyful labor. Is it hard work? You better believe it. Does it take away from you? You better believe it. But nothing can top the reward. That's whatever you do. Whatever you guys do, whatever the Lord places you in. For some, it must yield for you. But the Lord has conditioned you to handle whatever he puts you in, so long as it's from him. But when you go into this world and you seek something for the sake of advantage to gain all of what you can gain, that's when you have the vexation of spirit. That's what we just read about. The conditions by which you go out into the world is going to matter. Why you do what you do is going to matter. It will take away from you, end up being nothing, or you can be absolutely content. Have a joyful heart because it's a labor for good. And you heard what he just said. He gave no specific title to anything. That's not what he did. And I love that part too, because it can mean you could be a mechanic. It doesn't matter what you are. It matters that the Lord did it. It matters that you're operating in one of the Lord's seasons, not having the worldly ambition where you would lose your soul, because that's when you end up with vexation of spirit. See, a lot of people have tried to make it work. They have tried to pursue something for themselves, and they've tried to hang on to the Lord, and they found nothing but vexation of spirit. And if any of you are out there and you've done that yourselves, you already know there's vexation of spirit. You can chase it all day. You can do good in it, but there's vexation of spirit, and there's an emptiness nothing can fill. You already know that. But when the Lord does something, it's above and beyond what you expected. It's so far removed from any standard. The old man is in the grave in my life, but I remember the state of the old man, and I'm grateful because it could be just like that again. Not because of Christ, it's not. Only because of Christ, it's not. That's a key. Once you're thankful where you are, that's when things change. Because doesn't the Lord say, will you serve me? Didn't he ask Peter, Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep? He said that 3 times. Why? You know what 3 times means? When somebody asks you something 3 times, it was understood back in that culture that they were asking to see if in all conditions would you perform the task, despite the conditions. If it was asked of a person 3 times, that was understood to mean just that. So if a parent would ask a child something 3 times, it meant would they comply in all conditions, not just favorable ones. This is very important. Ecclesiastes 3:18. I said in my heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above beasts, for all is vanity. Isn't that something? Without that born-again spirit. Now you know why God says what he says about people of the world. Didn't God call them brute beasts? Yes, he did. Didn't he say they walk around like brute beasts? Yes, he did. And he also confirmed by himself, man has no preeminence above the beasts. That without the spirit God gives, man is but a beast. And sure enough, he has beastly desires, just like a beast. And that's the world. That's how they formulate their laws, after the desires of flesh, to pacify flesh. Because if they don't pacify flesh, why do you think Rome built the arenas? Why do you think they had gladiators? Because if you don't satisfy flesh, flesh will act it out. It's going to get exactly what it needs to get, just like an animal. An animal can be docile, but can also be aggressive and playful. An animal is an animal. An animal follows instincts. And without your spirit, so did we follow the desires of flesh, which are instinctive at best, thoughts that are common to all flesh, to do all things that are iniquitous to our Father. And have you noticed that righteousness is formulated in such a way as to not be a beast, but to be disciplined, to have power over flesh? Listen, he said, all go unto one place, all are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. He said, who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of beasts that goeth downward to the earth? Did you hear that? Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that his portion, his time, his earthly purpose. For who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? And that is true. No one has done that, save for the prophecies of our Father, which men do stress to understand. So much wisdom in these things. But here we have this scenario again, the emphasis and the closing. When you pursue this worldly life, there is vexation of spirit. There is uselessness or vanity. Given all the paths he took, trying to see what way was best that men should do all the days of their life. Even when he sought to understand it by way of his wisdom, not losing in himself in any lifestyle he pursued, he saw all of it was vanity. He said he was a preacher, but he said he even saw that as vanity. And then he gave the reasons why. But then he gives us a key. In the world there are seasons, weather seasons, but there are also seasons over men under heaven. Times of war, peace, sowing, reaping, all these things are for men. But then he bursts out, he says something. He's talking about the labors, not the labors you sought out like he did in the first 2 chapters, calling them vanity, but what God has given you, that you should in your labors eat and drink and enjoy the good of those labors. Enjoy the good of those labors. To enjoy the good of the labors, you're thankful. Even Jesus said that. That's why he said men ought to pray always. That's why he also said that we should always give thanks, because disclosure is coming, but we're not talking about some ET stuff. We're talking about man-made technologies that are very real, that they've been using, that, just other people have said, no, don't let everybody know about this. But the people that are in the world right now, they are, I'm not saying they're holy, right? But they want people to be able to access everything. Those people are the ones taking over everything. By the way, it's also going to be the demise of most of us. but because a kingdom is rising, and it's going to rise just that way. Through peace, he shall destroy many. He shall scatter among them the prey, the spoils, and the riches. He'll provide them with wealth, a very wealthy kingdom, and very wealthy citizens, and indeed the world is about to become very wealthy, and it will be a snare on all those who have a desire to have wealth. If you base your life upon wealth, you're going to have a problem. If you think you're blessed only because you have, you're going to have a problem. A blessing is an impartation, not something you own. A blessing is an empowerment, not necessarily something you can touch. That's what a blessing is. To be blessed is to be empowered. Please remember that. You go back to the root meanings, that's what you'll find.